Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into the world of construction costs. Specifically, we're going to break down two really critical but often confused parts of any project budget: waste and contingency. And listen, understanding the difference isn't just for the pros, right? It's actually key to making sure any project you're involved with is managed fairly and successfully.
You know, when most of us think about the cost of a construction project, it seems pretty simple, doesn't it? You just add up the cost of labor, you add up the cost of the materials, and voila, you're done. Well, it turns out that's a huge misconception. The reality is a little more complicated.
I mean, think about it. What happens with all the little things that are just part of the process? What about all the offcuts from lumber that you just can't use? What if you start digging a foundation and bam, you hit solid rock? Or what if materials get broken on site? Professionals have a plan for all this. They build these possibilities into what are called burdened costs.
All right, so let's tackle the first of these costs, waste. Now, I know the word waste sounds negative, right? Like something went wrong. But in the construction world, waste is actually a totally predictable and even necessary part of the building process. It's something that has to be planned for from the very beginning.
So what exactly is wastage, in formal terms? Well, it's the physical material that you know you're going to lose or damage during standard work. The key takeaway here is that this is not a surprise. Not at all. It's a predictable physical loss that estimators account for from day one.
So, where does all this physical loss actually come from? Well, material adjustment is a big one. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. You have an 8-foot piece of lumber, but you need a 7-foot piece. That leftover foot, that's waste. Then you've got handling losses, like the concrete that always gets left behind in the mixer. And of course, you have to factor in the costs of storing materials properly and then actually getting rid of all that leftover scrap.
Now, what's really interesting here is this isn't guesswork, not by a long shot. Professionals use these industry-standard percentages to figure it all out. As you can see, something really dense like concrete has a pretty low allowance, maybe 3 to 5%. But a material like drywall, which needs a ton of cutting and fitting, you could be looking at a waste factor as high as 15%.
So how do you know if a project is actually efficient? Well, project managers use something really clever called a waste index. They literally weigh all the waste material, divide it by the building's total floor area, and they get this single number. This lets them fairly compare the efficiency or the cleanliness of totally different projects, like a tiny house versus a giant skyscraper. It's a really smart way to benchmark performance.
Okay, so that covers the known losses. But what about all the unknowns? Well, that brings us to our second big concept: contingency. Now, if waste is all about physical material, contingency is a totally different beast. It's a financial safety net, and it's designed specifically to manage uncertainty. You can think of it as the project's rainy day fund. It's money that's set aside for all the what-ifs. It's a fund to cover unexpected risks and events that you simply can't predict. So while waste is about materials you can plan for, contingency is all about the money and risks you can't. And what kind of risks are we talking about? Well, they could be anything from incomplete design documents to the client changing their mind about something halfway through the project. It's also used for really unique or specialized designs where there's no instruction manual. And critically, it covers those truly unforeseen site issues, like digging for that foundation and hitting a massive boulder that was on 0 surveys. That's exactly what contingency is for.
Okay, so we've looked at them separately. Now let's put them right next to each other, head to head, because understanding how they differ is absolutely essential if you want to grasp how professionals really manage project costs and responsibilities.
This chart just lays it all out perfectly. Waste is physical, contingency is financial. Waste covers a known loss, contingency covers unknown risks. But the most important difference, especially if you're the client, is that last row, the final treatment. Waste is a direct cost. It's a sunk expense. But any unspent contingency fund, that gets returned to the client at the end of the project. That is a massive, massive difference.
And this all brings us to the bottom line, which really comes down to fairness and professional ethics. Managing these two funds correctly is a core responsibility for any project manager or estimator out there.
And this is really the ethical rule of thumb. A contingency fund is there to deal with genuine, unforeseen events. It is absolutely not a slush fund for a contractor to cover their own mistakes or for poor planning. Using it that way is a serious breach of professional trust.
Let's just reinforce this one last time because it is the most critical takeaway for anyone paying for a project. The money that's budgeted for waste is spent and it's gone. But the money in the contingency fund, that's the client's money and it's just being held in reserve.
If it's not needed, it comes right back to you. Period.
So when you see these items in a construction budget, don't think of them as hidden thieves. When they're managed correctly, waste allowances and contingency funds aren't extra charges at all. They're essential tools for professional, transparent, and successful project management that protects both the contractor and the client. In a word, they're just smart planning.